Hello little bugs! Today I have a bunch of books in hand because I am doing another book tag. This is the Bookish Scenarios tag created by Lindsay Hart's Books. As always, I have my tiny answer notebook. And the first question is kind of a big one. You have to get rid of all your books and you can only keep one from each of these genres. Contemporary, fantasy, nonfiction, and one other genre of your choosing. What books do you keep? Okay, I wrote a lot. So contemporary. I actually don't read a ton of contemporary books, and even when I was thinking contemporary, I wanted to say a book that's actually classic. I was looking in this section. If I had to pick only one book from the contemporary genre, it would be Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson. I have read it twice in my life, I believe. I'm not a huge rereader, so the fact that I have read it twice is saying a lot. And it's one of those gorgeous editions where it had the picture on the inner flaps. This book is the perfect embodiment of teenage summer. I purchased it, took it to the beach with me, read it in probably a day. And then about 5 years later, I took it back to the beach with me and read it again. So if you can't tell, this is a quintessential summer book that shaped my teenagedom. The main character in this is Emily, and she has a best friend named Sloane. But Sloane has mysteriously disappeared for the summer and left Emily with a bucket list. This is all the items on her bucket list, including kiss a stranger, go skinny dipping, steal something. And there's a cute little romance in it that I absolutely adore. Even if you're not a teenager or don't read YA anymore, like I don't really read YA anymore, this book still gives you those fluttery summer warm feelings, and it'll make you want to go to the pool. Okay, we're still on question number 1. Oh my god. What fantasy book would I keep? I was really tempted to say Son of the Shadows by Juliette Marillier because it's a recent favorite of mine, but my real answer is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. Blew my mind. If you want beautiful writing and a really weird high fantasy story, I guess it's not really high fantasy. It's kind of a mix of urban fantasy and high fantasy. I don't know. You just have to figure it out for yourself. Even though the cover looks kind of cringe, given this day and age, I still love it. At its barest bones, this book is about forbidden love between an angel and a demon. But it's a lot more complex than that. No one is who you think it is. Nothing operates how you expect it to operate. It's very creative and unique. And if you want a fantasy book that's going to surprise you and be like, I've never really read anything like this before, that's definitely how I felt when I first read it. That was 10 years ago, but I still look back on this book as one of my favorites of all time. The whole series. So if this was the only one I had left, I'd be pretty happy. Next, for nonfiction, I had to think about this for a little bit because I've been getting into nonfiction a lot more recently. And Know My Name by Chanel Miller is a must-read for everyone, in my opinion. But the one I would choose to keep, and that I know I will reread in my life, is What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. This is a memoir from the very famous Japanese author Haruki Murakami, and he's a runner. And this is about running. It's also about writing, being dedicated to something, in the flow state. This was very inspirational. Whenever I start feeling doubtful if I am ever going to write a book or finish my books, I just think about this book and how dedicated he is at running and writing and his process. It's like, I could do that. I don't know if I could do that. Long story short, this is a memoir about the craft of writing while also being about running. At first, I wasn't sure about it. I don't care about running. I don't run. I'm not a runner. But I got a lot out of this book as a writer. The one other genre of my choosing, I actually chose multiple genres. I chose cozy and classics. So for cozy, I chose A Song for the Wild-Built by Becky Chambers. This is a short and sweet little book. I don't have the actual copy with me because my boyfriend is reading it per my request. This is probably the coziest book you might ever read. It's what I like to call quiet philosophy while also being about nature and humanity. And it's technically sci-fi. There's a lot of things happening in this, but it's cozy. It follows a tea monk called Sibling Dex, and they are on a journey, a sort of spiritual journey to reconnect with nature. As they're walking out in the woods, they meet a robot named Moscap. And Moscap has so many interesting questions about humans. A lot of what you learn in this book is, why are there robots out in the woods? Why are there no robots in civilization? What is going on? How does this tea monk and this robot get along? The second book, A Prayer for the Crown Shy, is also good. I love this one more. The second one gets more into the overall society, but if you're looking for a cozy book, you can read this any time of year. It's not just a cozy fall book or a cozy summer book. I mean, it would be perfect for spring, summer, but you can read this whenever, and it's only like 100 pages. And then my last one for question 1 is classics. I wanted to pick at least one classic. I consider this a classic. It was written in, I believe this was originally written in the 40s. Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. I don't even know where to start with this. This is a book that I think everybody should read. It's not straightforward. The writing is easy to read, if that makes sense, but the actual plot and story is quite confusing and filled with symbols. An English major's dream book to annotate. I wrote a big, 20-page paper on this, and I don't really want to say much about it. I think the less you go in knowing about it, the more fun it is. But what I will say in a very general sense is that it's about the racial divide and how it affects people, whether you're a perpetrator or a victim. Finally, on to question number 2. You're at the bookstore and you hear a teenager telling their mom they don't like to read, but their mom insists they pick something. You walk over and recommend a book you think is great for people who aren't big on reading. What book is it? I think there's a lot of really obvious answers for this. My go-to book for people who don't enjoy reading is The Hunger Games. Even if they've seen the movie, even if XYZ, I recommend it. But I feel like everyone would say that. It would be really difficult for me to recommend a book to someone without knowing their interests. So I picked a couple of things. It's always safe to go with graphic novels. If the teenager prefers romance, I would go with Heartstopper. Coziness, The Tea Dragon Society. It has beautiful illustrations. For more adventurous, it'd be like Lumberjanes. For fantasy, that would be really difficult to recommend because I haven't been in the YA fantasy space in a while, but I have heard that I have this copy. I personally have not read this yet, but I probably would just go ahead and recommend it to a teenager that I didn't know. And that is Legend Born by Tracy Deonn. I've only heard good things, only fantastic things about this. I guess it's about superheroes. I actually don't know. I've just heard really great things about it, and I'd probably point at it and be like, if you want fantasy, read this. Number 3, you're not feeling yourself and need a pick-me-up. Which book do you read to put yourself in a great mood? As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a big rereader. If I want something to put me in a good mood, I'm typically checking out a new book on Libby, hoping that it'll make me feel better. So in theory, if I were trying to put myself in a good mood, I would turn to my favorites. I would probably pick up something like Since You've Been Gone or a childhood favorite. My Life Next Door is another great example. I would maybe pick up Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. I once again am bringing to the table A Psalm for the Wild Built and Heartstopper or The Tea Dragon Society, because there's absolutely nothing bad happens in The Tea Dragon Society. Like, if you want to be happy, read about some tea dragons. Ooh, along those same lines, it's in one of the stacks. Oh no. Abort mission. The Anne of Green Gables graphic novel. I would definitely reread that if I needed to be put in a good mood. I do own it, but it is lost in the void of book stacks on the floor. You go back in time for a day to your teenage years. What book would you most likely have caught yourself reading? Most likely is interesting. I read a lot as a teenager, and I really don't know which one I would be most likely to be reading. Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell was really impactful to me. I considered it to be almost a reflection of my own soul. Graceling by Christian Cashore introduced me to the YA fantasy space when I was younger and changed my life. But if I were to say my most likely, it would be something by Sarah J. Maas. I know she's kind of controversial now. At the time, I did not know anything controversial about her. And I would most likely be reading Throne of Glass, specifically Queen of Shadows. This was my favorite book in the series, and I just remember absolutely devouring it. You can see my little book stamp. This is my original copy. Can you believe that this thick hardcover was $19 back then. 19. The good old days, right? With the good old covers. Question number 5. Your friend surprises you with a 4-day trip and you have 1 hour to pack. Which book do you bring to read on the way? I'd probably bring a gigantic fantasy novel that's completely ridiculous to have on a trip, because that's what I tend to do. I will bring little tiny books with me sometimes thinking that I can just finish the whole thing. Well, I'm on a trip, that never happens. I'm usually never reading on a trip anyways, except for whenever I go camping. I have a distinct memory, and I think I still have a photo of this, of taking a Clash for Kings? Was it King? What? I have a distinct memory of taking a Clash of Kings with me to the Buffalo River on a canoeing camping trip with my family, and I read a ton of it. I think I finished it there. I was probably like that far in when we got there, and I read the entire thing. We were there for a week, and this is basically the only book I read, but I would put it in our dry bag, get in the canoe, and my family likes to fish and stuff, and I prefer to just sit in the water and read, and that's what I did. I love bringing a gigantic impractical mass market paperback with me. And also depends on the type of trip. If I'm by water, I will be reading. So my answer to that is, if a Priory of the Orange Tree came in a mass market paperback like this, I would take that. Yeah, I would take that. Or maybe, what's that gigantic Brandon Sanderson book? The Way of Kings. It's a humongous fantasy book. I'd probably just throw that in my bag. And then I just, hope for the best, I guess. Number 6, your house has been robbed. Don't worry, everyone is safe, but your bookshelf has been raided. What's the book you really hope is safe? I have a lot of books that I wish would be saved, but I don't think I would be too heartbroken from missing most of them because I could just repurchase them. Like, I would be pretty devastated if my original copies of Throne of Glass were missing, because these hardcovers go for a really pretty penny now. But the ones I would actually be upset about missing were my really nostalgic ones, like my original copy of A Bargain for Francis, which you can see in my booktube newbie tag, as well as like Angelina Ballerina or any of my books I had as a child. For an almost purely monetary reason, I would miss The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery the most, because I paid about $20 for this on Thrift Books because it's a beautiful edition and it's not exactly super common. I mean, I could probably find this for about the same price somewhere else, but I don't want to. I'd be pretty upset if I had to repurchase this because I love this edition. And then last question. This is almost a throwaway nothing question to me. Your friend borrows a book and returns it in awful condition. Do you A, just pretend you haven't noticed, B, ask them to repurchase it, or C, secretly do the same to something of theirs? When I was younger, I probably would have been A because I'm so non-confrontational. These days I would do B, kindly be like, hey, do you just want to keep this copy and then buy me a new one, And I would definitely not do something to theirs because that's insane. However, I have a secret fourth option, option D if you will. I think any of my friends who would borrow my books, if they destroyed my book, they would have already purchased a new copy for me. They would bring the new and old copy to me and be like, hey, sorry, here's, you can take both of them or just one, I ruined it, I'm sorry. Here's a new copy. Because this has happened to me before, this was a long time ago, but someone borrowed my book, accidentally ruined it, don't remember how, and they bought me a new copy before I even knew. I don't think I would run into this problem. I think my friends and family are kind enough to spare me from having to go, hey, what the fuck? So that is the Bookish Scenarios tag. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave some comments with your answers to these bookish scenarios. And I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye, little bugs. My life next door will change your life. You know what I'm saying?